that this is what we're trying to get to, that you cannot have unity, you cannot have oneness if you have boundaries. If you have a sense of I am and you are, right? If you're trying to protect yourself from others, if you're trying to protect your energy, you can't have unity. We have to be in a place where we feel secure in our own self, where we feel safe enough to open completely and to perceive another from that open pool of water, from that stillness. And that's where we're all trying to get to.
I've created a 4-month course for my Pay What You Can Roots to Samadhi community that I'll be running from August through November. We're going to be deep diving into the practical aspects of how to develop a deep, tangible spiritual connection. Check the description box to learn more. Before we get into today's conversation, I would like to give a trigger warning for the loss of a child. Maybe we could start by hearing a little bit about you. So tell us about your background. What have you always had these spiritual experiences happening in your life, or did something in your life trigger them?
Well, it's such a great question because I knew all my life, like I always felt like I had that I had abilities, that I was psychic, but I didn't have any words for it. I had no framework. There was no, in my childhood, there was like nobody talked about meditation. There was no information available. And so I didn't understand. And I remember being 5 years old, and I remember being in my bed, and I remember a voice telling me that I was going to grow up and I was going to help people, that I was going to teach people about better ways of living. And I remember being 5, and I remember laughing out loud and saying, I can't do that. How will I do that? And I specifically remember the feeling of it. And it was just this wonderful love. And I know, of course, now that was my guide speaking to me, but I remember it so specifically, but it didn't even at 5, it doesn't even dawn on you that that's odd, that you're having a conversation with someone who's not there. But so I'd say the gifts were always there, but I didn't understand them. And it wasn't until in terms of my awakening process, it wasn't until I started having some dreams that they didn't just come true. They were like, I had the dream, and then 5 years later, it was like I walked into that dream, and it was like a photographic reality of what I had dreamt about. And then I went through an awakening process that kicked off with a really difficult divorce, which is just the kick in the rear that I needed to wake me up. Mm-hmm. And after that, I started having crazy psychic experiences where I was, jumping into other people's bodies and like having all these like unusual bilocating, all this kind of stuff happening. So it kind of came in all at once, I guess I would say. I would say before that, I went through a long period of being asleep where there was a lot of stuff I was trying not to see. And then I had this big awakening, which was the open your eyes, and then everything flooded in.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's get into those dreams that you had where you learned about your pre-birth plan. Could you share some of that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've had many, many dreams showing me the plans I had for this life before I came in. And a lot of them were super helpful in understanding exactly how we plan our lives, like how much control. That's always a question people have is like, what is free will? How much free will do we actually have? And the way I understand it, both from my dreams and from working with the angels, I'm a trance channel, and I channel messages from the angels. And my understanding is that it is like we do have a good amount of free will. So I think of it as like we are like bowling with the guardrails up. Like we can't get a gutter ball. Like we are on a certain path, and they're going to prevent us from going way, way, way off that path, but that we always have the ability to choose. So one of the dreams I had was I was with my guide, and we were planning this life when we were looking at the life as if it was a film strip. And we were, running the film strip through the projector, and we're looking at it frame by frame. And we were focused on this one part of the life. And we would play it back and forth, and we would talk to each other, and we'd be like, well, what if we did it this way? What if we changed it so that I did this instead? And then in the dream, I would jump into the film strip and I would act it out. And then I would jump back out, and we would talk, and we'd be like, how was that? Should we do it differently? How should we, was this the best result? And in the dream, we did that over and over, rehearsing this one, what would have been a very, very critical meeting in my life, something that was an important part of keeping me in those guardrails, right? This was like an important person I had to meet, and it had to go a particular way. So in the dream, it showed me rehearsing that moment repetitively until I could be sure that by the time I was born and I was living that life and I had met that moment, that it was going to be so ingrained how I was going to respond, what I was going to say, that it was going to go a particular way.
Wow,
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. So that was one of the dreams. I had another dream of my life between lives. I had lots and lots, but another one that was interesting is I had a dream where when I dream of myself on the other side, I often feel, I have a very distinct feeling in my body is I feel like myself, but I feel more genderless, I would say. I feel, and I guess that would be a very, very balanced, right? Very balanced between my masculine and feminine. I feel very disembodied. I feel, like you just in Casper the Ghost, how he floats. He kind of like, I'm very floaty on the other side. And I have this feeling, I would describe it as being like extremely optimistic and the sense that I can do anything. Like there's this sense of like being like your best mood that you ever have on your very best day. That's how I feel. Like I feel super empowered isn't even the word because it feels just like there's just no friction in my life and I feel super happy. And so when I'm on that side, that's how I feel in these dreams. And I have one where I'm coming to come in and I'm floating toward this, like toward the destination of coming in. And I'm with a group. I'm in a pack of souls and I'm in the center and I see the pack around me. We're coming in together. It's clear that we're coming in as a group. And then there's one to my left who I look over at and I smile sort of like, hey, this is going to be fun. And we have this feeling of like, oh my God, we're going to crush this. You know what I mean? This is going to be, we have this plan. It's going to be so easy. And I think we all feel that before we come in. I think we think when we're on the other side, we think because we have that feeling of like so empowered, so everything is so positive. We think we're going to, let me do this life. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to crush it. And then we get here and the veil drops and then we have like horrific childhood conditioning and like all of that falls away and we're like, oh, what did I do to myself? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But before we get here, we think, man, it's going to be like, they're like, put me in, coach. I want to go do the life. It's going to be amazing. But the cool thing is that on that particular life, I saw a friend and I recognize now, like later, who that person was that I came in with. So it's clear to me that I came in specifically with a group and a group of souls that we were meant to work together and to connect in this life.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is, I think is common is people have a plan and then they come in and they say, okay, let's go do this plan together. I had another one where I was coming down and I saw myself coming down to earth and I came down about halfway and then I stopped. And I stopped on a platform and I stayed there for a while. And I watched all the other souls coming down. I could see them all coming down, but I waited. I stayed and waited. And I think that is like, it's like coming up from the ocean so that you don't get the bends. Like you stop halfway, you know what I mean? And wait for your body to acclimate. And so that was showing me the process of acclimating before so that I could lower my frequency enough to come into the body. So many of them. I had another one about coming in before I was born and planning this life. And I saw myself coming to Earth and it was like I was in a spaceship, but that's showing me the process of like coming to Earth and visiting Earth before I came into my life. And in the dream, I'm kind of cruising around looking at everything and I see humans and I'm like super excited to see humans again, recognizing I haven't been back to Earth for a while. So I'm seeing all these different humans and I'm feeling that again, that feeling of like super excited, super empowered. And as I'm going by, I'm touching hands and the message is telling me that when I get here, I was meant to use hands-on healing in the beginning of my journey. And I still have that gift. I just am not meant to use it all the time, but it was part of my healing process was using hands-on healing. And so the gift was just showing me that once I got here, I was going to be using that gift to help me to clear my own energy so that I could get back to what I needed to be. Yeah. So many different things that I have experienced in those between life dreams. I've also seen myself, interestingly, putting down weapons before I came in. which of course, yes, raises all kinds of questions, right? Like why do you need weapons on the other side? But I've had multiple dreams in which I was getting ready to be born and I was laying down my weapons and then coming in. So that's a whole nother conversation.
Right. Do you have any idea what those weapons were for?
I do think that there are multiple different there's no question in my mind that the light outweighs the dark. There's no question, but there is also the truth that there are antagonizing or difficult energies that exist in the universe. And so I think I was involved in working with those energies on the other side. Yeah.
Right.
So, mm-hmm.
So you mentioned that, well, I don't want to cut you off. First, was there any more memories that you wanted to share?
From those experiences? Gosh, there have been, like I said, lots and lots. And I think the overwhelming sense that I get from all of those experiences, I've had multiple dreams where I met with my, like before we come in, we have like a council that we meet with. And so whenever you have dreams, if you dream about yourself in a conference room or in a meeting room, that's about you meeting with, that's your pre-birth planning is what that dream is about. And so I've had lots of dreams about that, about my pre-birth planning. And so it's depending on why you chose to come back to Earth, and right now at this time, like coming back to Earth at this time, and you're very tuned into what's going on in the world, and like this is a very specific and influential time to be born in. And so coming in, none of us came in lightly. We were all of us were very aware of what was going to be happening. And so those pre-birth planning meetings would have been, so, okay, here's what I'm coming in for. And here's what I'm going to try to do when I'm here. And a lot of it is for ourselves. Like, even though, and I think it's really comforting for people to think about that they came here for a purpose. Like, it's really, really comfortable for us and comforting for us to think I came here to serve others. And I think some of that is because we have a difficult time focusing on ourselves and recognizing that we are worthy, and that coming in just for our own enlightenment is valuable, that we think about the suffering of our lives. We think about all the difficulties. And by the way, especially if you came in with a high vibration, it is very, very difficult to anchor yourself onto the planet if you're a high vibration soul. And one of the ways we do it is by attaching a ton of karma to ourselves. So some of the very high vibe people have extremely difficult lives and very difficult childhoods. And so people come in, they have these crushing childhoods or crushing experiences in their lives. And then they wonder and they feel like, boy, I wouldn't have chosen this just for me. I wouldn't have chosen this. Like, if I knew this was going to happen, no way I would have done this. And it's comforting for them to think, no, I came in, I'm suffering for others, right? And that makes it easier to swallow. And, but the truth is that at the end of the day, our individual experience is incredibly important, and it informs the collective, that it is a personal journey that we then play out through the journey of others. We have these interactions that are super important, but even though I say at the end of the day, it's always about you, that your growth is the most important thing. The reason it is so important is because the degree to which you are able to grow then helps the collective, that your experience of growth, your experience of enlightenment then moves into the collective consciousness and shows everyone that it's possible, shows everyone what that feels like. It creates more light in the collective consciousness. So yes, it's a personal journey, but we are all one. So nothing is actually alone. Everything is for everyone. So, but it is a hard pill to swallow, I think, for some people to say. Some people really get into this idea of like, no, I came here for others, and that's what makes my life meaningful. And I would say yes and no, right? Yes, you came for others, but you came primarily, the focus is on the individual journey, is to heal ourselves. Yeah.
Wow. I really love what you said there. And I was just talking to someone about this yesterday, because I've tried to understand, why is it that we would choose such difficult circumstances for ourselves? And how does that really benefit the collective if we're still just repeating this cycle of abuse or whatever we're going through as children?
Yeah.
And what you just said is that we do it, if I'm understanding you correctly, we do it to go through the experience of dipping that far down into the darkness, for lack of a better word, because they're in ultimate reality, I know it's all just an experience, but dipping that far down into the darkness and then being able to come back up into the light. And then going through that process puts that information into the collective consciousness of, this is how we do this. And something about that experience expands the universe itself, or that's my thoughts on it. Like, expands God, expands love, or whatever you want to call that ultimate reality.
100%. You're exactly right. And I think that gets to that idea that we each carry a spark of the divine, and our goal, what the goal of source is to understand itself. So by going through this process and seeing ourselves in this difficult context, we have a deeper understanding of who we are, who our divine spark is. And that is what then informs the universe, informs everything, right? So it is all connected. And super important. And there is no accident. The other thing you said, which I love, is that you said that the depth that we come into is what then enables us to reach our highest highs. That one of the things, it's actually one of the interesting messages that came through from the angels just recently, is they described it that way. They said specifically, we are polarized beings. In a human body, we are polarized. So the angels themselves are not, that they are different from us, in that angels carry the frequency of peace. And peace is nothing. It is the absence of polarization. Peace is one blanket, calm, endless, like silence. It's beautiful. It's lovely, but there's no polarity. And so without polarity, you can't have friction. You can't have creation. So angels are eternal. They never change. But they said humans embody the frequency of change, that we are change. It's what we are. And that we have this polarity where it's literally the top of our head and the bottom of our feet. We're like a magnet, or like a battery. I mean, where we have positive and negative polarity, and we are constantly creating. And that it is the very energy, the motion that we go through that then moves out into the world, and we transform everything just by walking in the room. And so we are the frequency of change. And so what's interesting about this to me, like in the context of understanding why we come in with so much hardship, is that the polarity, that idea of positive and negative, that if you have something that reaches deep into the depths, that goes as dark, as hard, as difficult as you can imagine, then the opposite of that is going to be the highest high, right? It's going to be, so it's like a springboard, that if you reach down into the depth of your own darkness, then from that place you are ricocheted by the law of like what we are, by this polarity. It's a balance. So you have the dark in order to help you reach the light. So it's all very much by intention.
Wow, I've never heard it explained like that. So you just like turned on some light bulbs for me. One of my favorite spiritual teachers, his name is Aaron Abke. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but a few months ago, his work is really with evolution of consciousness, and specifically the Kundalini awakening.
Oh, interesting.
And he has talked about how in Hindu philosophy, it's exactly what you just said. It's like the negative pole on, I think it's on the bottom, and the positive pole on the top. And then a Kundalini awakening is just the movement of charge. And it's like a lightning strike happening in the body, moving energy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's so interesting that when we think about what we're trying to achieve as we are going through our experience here, that as we're trying to move toward our own individual awakening, we are, when I say awakening, I mean more enlightenment, when we're trying to get to enlightenment, and we can talk about what that is, but it is the goal is to get to a place where, not to a place of peace on earth, because peace on earth is stagnant. Peace is never changing. Peace is always the same. It's eternal. And we are in the frequency of change. So what do you want if you don't want peace? You want harmony. You want the balance of two things. You want it to be a blend. So think about what harmony is. It's many different notes, all the same, right? All coming together into a resonant frequency that is blended and merged, where it's in balance. So this is what we're trying to achieve, is harmony on Earth. And that allows for us to continue to create, to be that frequency of change, to be in a process of evolution, of growing and learning, which is what our job is, right? Our job as human souls is to learn. And to each of us are supposed to embody a frequency of the divine and carry that through and experience it through the process of evolution. So as we go through this ascension, we're trying to move out of this karmic construct where we've had to face ourselves in this mirroring situation, which is incredibly challenging, and move into this higher frequency of harmony where we create without friction, without the same degree of friction that we've had. So that's what we're trying to achieve, but it is that idea of balance between our masculine and feminine energies. And so that is the process. So it's literally like you'll heal your masculine, heal your feminine, heal masculine and heal feminine, and get to a place where you embody this harmony.
Wow. Thank you so much for explaining that. I've never heard it, the differentiation between peace and harmony like that.
Yeah, that's a big one for the angels.
Okay.
In terms of helping us understand what they are, helping us understand what we are, and what are we doing here? You know what I mean? What is our job? What is our role? Yeah.
Well, I have a couple more questions about the pre-birth memories. One thing that you mentioned is that for a high vibration soul, they may pick a high karma life to help them anchor here in this lower vibration. So one thing I've always wondered about isn't there a really high potential to pick up more karma? Let's say that somebody was really abused as a child and then they're programmed with those tendencies, and then maybe they pass on, they become the perpetrator. Would they then pick up more karma?
That is the risk, and that is the danger. That coming to Earth is not there's no guarantees here. Like I said, before we come in, we are all full of ourselves and we think we're going to just do amazingly when we get here, but we get here and it is really hard. And it is very possible for someone to come in and to actually lower their frequency rather than improve and grow and raise their frequency. That can definitely happen. And from doing your own healing that when we go back to past lives and we connect with those past lives, often we can bring in wonderful gifts, but we also bring in their junk. We bring in all of the past woundings that weren't resolved in our past lives, and we have to resolve those. So yeah, absolutely. We can come in and take a wrong turn. And nobody ever gives up on us, right? There's always the possibility to recover and to come back and to grow. But yeah, it's not a guarantee because we do have free will here. Yeah.
So my other question is, do you remember any details of what the purpose was in this life or anything specific that you planned?
Oh gosh, for me, I know some aspects of my role. I know that if you think of all of us who have come in, light workers, and I use that term to define people who chose to come here to help during this process of ascension. I know there's lots of different meanings to that term, but that's how I use it. And there's kind of the pre-team and the post-team is how I see it. That there are, and I channeled a lot about this from the angels, events that we are in the middle of and that are accelerating. And there's going to be some really, really difficult times on the horizon. And they're not far off. They're close. They're very close. And in the pre-team, we are helping to prepare people for that. We are helping to, as much as possible, like this is a very unique time that we're in right now of support for healing. So you may notice that right now, people that you know around you, or maybe for yourself, that this has been a period where we are hitting our karma like with everything we've got, that it is a really, really crunchy time. And that is because like this is our last ditch effort to heal as much as we possibly can. The other thing that's really unique about this life that we're in right now is that in past lives that we've had, we only had access to the past lives that were relevant to that life. This life, we can bring in all past lives. We have the opportunity to clear everything, to wipe the slate clean. And that's right now. And that hasn't always been the case. So it's a very unique time. So the pre-team is focused on that, is focused on, healing, is focused on helping people to understand what's going on, helping to reduce fear. This is the job. It's the preparation. And then the post-team is there for the aftermath. And it is for helping to kind of put humanity back together again and helping to guide us toward, we're meant to get to a place of like the ultimate goal, and this may take a long time to get there, but not as long as you would think, is that we are all meant to be like, think of ourselves humans as the neurons of the earth, and the planet is one big organism. And in a human body, we are like neurons, that we are her thoughts. And the goal is for the earth to become self-aware, is for the earth in the same way that we are trying to incorporate ourselves and our whole body and become aware of all of the aspects of us. We want to then expand that out to have the earth become self-aware and have the earth become harmonized, that same idea of one frequency that's all speaking one at once. And so that's the goal. And we do that as if you think of humans being the neurons right now, we are all divided. We are different countries. We have this idea of this is mine and this is yours. We're very separated in our experience. We're meant to go through a period where all of a sudden the boundaries of our perception start melting away. And we start to have much more, like those of you who, and who are deeply empathic, that is what's coming for humanity, is where we start to feel each other's feelings. We become much more naturally empathetic, and it becomes impossible for us to harm others because we feel what that's going to feel like. It's as if we're harming ourselves. And that then opens the doorway to us becoming much more of a sense of one with one another. And so the concept of boundaries, the concept of greed, it just doesn't make sense anymore. And as those things melt away, as we become one big country, one big humanity, then that brings the earth into harmony. And eventually we become the caretakers of the earth. And so this is what we're trying to head towards. And so I know for myself that I was meant to be on both teams, that I came to be on the pre-team and the post-team. And some people are on one team or the other, and some people are on both. But I know for myself that I have a role on each side.
Oh, amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us about your pre-birth memories. Would you like to share about the past life that you remember with your twin flame healing story?
Yes, I do. I do love sharing that. I've had a lot of past life memories, but this one sticks with me because it is by far the most potent of the past lives and the most influential in this life that I can remember. And I started to remember this past life. It came in when I was in a channeling retreat, and I had the whole experience, and it was detailed. I remembered myself. I was living in Portugal. I dropped into the life when I was around age 40, in my 40s. I was Catholic. I was living in Portugal. I was related. I worked for the king, but I was not the king. I worked for the king. And my job was to plan all of the voyages. I planned, I was involved in ship building, like ship design, as well as map making. And I ran a school teaching other young men how to do these skills, how to map make, and how to, and I was planning all these voyages, and they were all for exploration. To go and, learn about the world and to see what we could find and all that. And I loved it. I was super enthusiastic about this. And I always wanted to go on these expeditions, but I never got to because my role there, planning everything and running the school, was too important. And I know in that life, so anyways, I was working with the school of young men. And as I drop into the life, I recognize that there's one young man. I see myself in the room, and it's a low ceilinged room. I see it's full of men sitting at tables, and they're working on different charts and tools. And I've just received this one very interesting new navigational tool. It looks kind of like a sphere. And I choose this one young man to work with it. And I recognize as I'm focused on him that I'm very much in love with this young man. So in the life, I recognize I'm gay, but I'm also very Catholic, and that I don't have words for what this is. I know it's not okay. I also know in the life that I'm not married. I never had children because I'm very, very gay. And and it is this young man. I am so irrepressibly drawn to him. I keep coming up with reasons why I need to interact with him. Like I give him this special tool, knowing that it'll go to throw us together. And I'm thrown forward to a meeting where he comes into a room that I'm working in, and there's a big fireplace. We're sitting at a table and we're talking over this implement. And he reaches out and he puts his hand on mine. And it's clearly an invitation. And I panic, like to the depth of my soul, I panic. Like I recognize, like there's so much programming, so much of my experience of life. This is not okay. Even though like this is undoubtedly my twin flame. Like I just cannot leave this man alone. And so I panic, I stand up and I run out of the room. And then I avoid him. For like 2 weeks, I do everything I can not to see this person. And 2 weeks later, one of the managers comes in and is talking to me, and he's telling me about the new expedition the new voyage is going out. And he shows me the ship manifest, and I see the name of the man on the list. And I recognize I was always talking about how I wanted to go. And I recognize he's going because I can't. So he's going for me, which is wonderful and deeply moving. But I'm also secretly super relieved because then I won't have to see him anymore and it won't tempt me. And I just want it to go away. I want it to be not in my experience. I want it to not exist. So I'm really happy that he's leaving up until about 6 months later when I find out that boat sank and he dies. And I am beyond grief. I am overwhelmed by grief. And I wish, like to my depth of my soul, I wish it was me who had drowned. I wish I could be the one that took that died. And I die with that wish on my heart, the wish that it could have been me who died. So I come into this life and I have the channeling and I remember all of that. And it was just, you can imagine as this coming up and it's crying and crying. And it's incredible, all the emotion as if I was living it in real time. So then I have the memory of it, and that's it. I just remember what happened. And then a couple of years later, I've had this, my dreams show me, and I'm aware through channeling that I have something I'm trying to clear from my liver, and I don't know what it is. So I'm working with it. And then I'm working with this one healer who's a friend of mine. I go in and I'm sitting on her table and she's doing acupuncture and this crystal thing. It's all awesome. All of a sudden, as I'm laying there, a flood it's like somebody opened the gate and boom, this flood of memories come out and multiple instances from this life where I almost drowned. And what's amazing is that it unfolds like a story. So the first memory I have is when I was 12 years old in this life, when I'm at the beach and I'm swimming in the ocean and a wave hits me and knocks me off my feet and I'm tumbling, and I don't know which way is up. And I have that memory. And then from that memory, these visions that they're coming up, they bring me back to, I'm seeing the life of my twin flame as he falls off the boat and as he's in the water and he's struggling to try to keep his head above water. And I see how me tumbling and drinking all the water and feeling like I can't tell which way is up. I see that I'm having that experience of drowning. The first part of his experience of drowning, I felt when I was 12 years old. Then I move backward in this life to my infancy when I was a toddler. And I see myself when I was at the neighbor's pool, I fell in and I see myself sinking to the bottom of the pool, which is what happened. And I was at the bottom of the pool. Eventually the neighbor saw me and dove in and got me. But I felt, again, as the memory, I felt myself sinking to the bottom of the pool. And I have that memory. And then I flip back to the life of my twin flame and I see as he starts to lose strength and it's cold. And I see as he starts to sink into the ocean. And I see how I experienced that part of his death in this life when I was an infant. Then I flash back to my life again. And I see myself when I was in my 20s and I went whitewater rafting and the raft flipped over and I was thrown behind a rock in the river. And the way it works when it's called a sinkhole. When you're and behind the space in a rock in the river, the water comes around the rock and it pours across the rock and it becomes underwater like a waterfall. And I was thrown into that space and it pushed me all the way down onto the bottom of the riverbed and pinned me. And the force of the suction was so hard, it literally pulled my wetsuit boots off my feet, just sucked them right off. And I was pinned on the bottom of the river. And I'm, you know how when you're in a very, very scary situation like that, time slows down. And it was like I could see every moment was lasting 3 times as long. And I'm down there and I'm thinking, there's nothing I can do. I'm going to die right now. There's no escape. I can't move. I literally am pinned and I can't move. There's no like MacGyver solution when you're stuck at the bottom of the river. And I'm having this memory, and I'm recognizing that this was the death that I had wished. This was the karma that I had given myself in that life. When I had wished to be the one who had died, I was now drowning to experience what I had wished for myself. And so I'm held underwater. And then the most amazing thing happens is that all of a sudden there's a whoosh, something changes in the water, and I am pushed to the surface. And I come out and I see the raft above me, and I'm able to come around to the side. And then I'm able to get away, and a kayak comes and pulls me out of the river. And so I didn't die. But what I didn't understand at the time until 2 weeks later, when I went in for my ultrasound, is that at that moment, the baby that I was carrying took that death for me. And I lost my pregnancy. And the baby had come in specifically to heal my karma. So the role of my baby, the contract that we formed before I came in, was I knew I had this karma that I needed to clear, which is that I wished to die by drowning, that I wished to take the death that my twin flame experienced. But my unborn child made an agreement that they would come in and they would, at that moment when I was meant to die, they would die and free me from my karma. And so when I did the ultrasound, they showed that the baby had died at 8 weeks, right at that moment when I was under the water.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
intense.
Wow, I'm so sorry about the loss of your baby.
Thank you. It is, I mean, it's such an incredible blessing to understand, like every pregnancy, even one that doesn't make it, they come in with intention that there is every moment that a soul crosses through. It doesn't matter if that baby lives or dies, that they have an experience, and that experience is healing in some way for them. That's always the case, regardless of how it ends, that it is always instrumental, that it always brings you something and brings that soul something. So yeah, so it's a beautiful thing, and it's a blessing. And when I get emotional about it, I get emotional about how beautiful it is to know that that soul who was my baby came in and did that for me.
Wow. Well, I have a couple more questions about your past life memory.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has it influenced you in this life at all? The fact that you're aware of that memory, has it changed you at all in this life?
Yeah, absolutely. I think overall, my journey in this life has been about becoming increasingly allowing and accepting. And I remember I used to really find like in Buddhist philosophy, it's all about like detachment, about not being attached. And I don't have a great understanding of their general print of the law. Like, I'm not a Buddhist. I don't have a deep understanding of religion. And that was honestly part of my plan coming in, as I was not born into any one specific religion. But the concept of detachment, to me, the way I take that, and the overall concept of not being attached to things, the way I change that for myself is this idea of loving what is. Mm-hmm. And being super present with life, and understanding that the degree to which I can allow and be present and accept. And it isn't just acceptance in terms of saying like, oh, life is crummy and it's always going to be crummy, so just take it like it is and be happy. It is not that at all. It is getting to a space where I understand what's happening from a spiritual perspective, that I'm not drawn into the chaos that's around me. When I can be around something and you may have experienced this in your own healing, where you can be in a dynamic with someone where it's really, really triggering. And you recognize eventually that that trigger is coming from inside of you, that they are behaving in a certain way and you are receiving it in a certain way. And when you eventually heal how you're receiving it, which is never related to the moment, it's always related to something in your childhood or something in a past life. When you heal that, then all of a sudden you can go and be in that exact same experience, but you feel completely differently. You feel fine. You feel like you can see the person engaging in the behavior, but you no longer feel the same friction. You become at peace, and you feel, if anything, you can feel love towards them, and you can feel sympathy, understanding that they're going through what they're feeling is hard, but it doesn't affect you in the same way. And so it's getting to that space of moving through life in a way that feels friction free, where it's the same life. It could be the same people even, but you feel completely differently about it. And so the process for me has been a progression of getting to a space now where when I experience a trigger, I treasure it. When I get triggered, I look at it because it doesn't happen very often anymore, to be honest, because every time I find one, I will immediately recognize, oh, that's in me. Okay, what about me feels that? Like, what about me creates this environment, is creating this experience? And then I go into that and I find the wound and then I heal it. And that process of constantly working with my own energy that has brought me to a place where, yeah, it's really hard to throw me off my game. Not a lot upsets me anymore. And so that has been the process of learning how to see life from this spiritual perspective, to be able to try to embody that sense of, and I saw it last in the retreat that I just held this past weekend. One of the beautiful images that came through was this understanding of us and seeing ourselves in a life. Like, imagine that you are that lovely pool of water that forms, could be even in a pothole, a beautiful pool of water that reflects the sky after a rainstorm, and how it is so still and how it reflects whatever you see in it. And I think of the goal for us to get to is to be like that beautiful pool of water. And to understand that, like, water is spirit, water is love, but it's that idea of loving compassion, being able to encounter another person and to not think about, like, a pool of water doesn't radiate anything. It's not projecting anything. When we meet another person, so often we're focused on, like, what am I showing? How are they thinking of me? What are their feelings about me? And if instead we're just the pool of water and we're saying, you can look in and see whatever you want. I'm transparent. You can look right through me. And I'm going to reflect you. I'm going to be looking at you. I'm going to be observing you with this stillness. So not projecting any of my junk. I'm just going to observe you from a space of loving compassion and see you from stillness, from a place of purely being in the moment and pure observation, but from the perspective of water, which is spirit, which is loving kindness. Right. And that I think is the goal for all of us, is to get to the space where we feel. And the part about letting people look in, that's one of the hardest, because we are so fearful of being seen and being seen at a deep level. We're worried if people look in, we're going to be judged, right? That we're going to be hurt, all the things. And so getting to a place where we feel ready to be literally a transparent pool, to let people look in and to be as open and receptive as we want them to be. And that, I think, is the goal. And the truth is, here's what's fascinating. This happened again in one of the sessions with the angels, is where they showed, and I do a monthly meditation I call peace bathing, where angels bring people up to this vibration of peace, which is the absence of all things. And from that space, they can have specific experiences that you can't have on the earth plane. And from that space, they cleared everyone of everything that would make them fearful, and allowed them, they literally like disrobed them of everything that is like all of their projections, all of the ways they want to be seen, all of their ideas about who they were, disrobe them and then let them stay and stand as open souls. And then once they got comfortable with that feeling, they brought this whole group together as one. And it took so much, if you can imagine how challenging it is to allow and it was all about feeling the feelings of being seen, of letting yourself be seen at this really, really deep level, and understanding that this is what we're trying to get to, that you cannot have unity. You cannot have oneness if you have boundaries. If you have a sense of I am and you are, right? If you're trying to protect yourself from others, if you're trying to protect your energy, you can't have unity. We have to be in a place where we feel secure in our own self, where we feel safe enough to open completely and to perceive another from that open pool of water, from that stillness. And that's where we're all trying to get to. And it is this process of balance of heal the masculine, heal the feminine, heal the masculine, heal the feminine. It's like just ratcheting up a ladder till we get to the point of this harmony, of this pure rhythmic harmony, this balance inside, which is that reflective pool of water we're trying to embody. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes, and that's so helpful. And I want to ask you, you're talking a lot about healing and reaching a place of stillness. And practically speaking, how do you do that? Let's say that somebody's experiencing a trigger and then they realize that, oh, this is connected to whatever happened in my past. How can they go in and heal that so that they're no longer triggered by it?
I love that you asked that question. And one of the big things to understand, I think, in terms of a process for personal healing, for self-healing, because you can heal yourself. And certainly we are meant to work with others. Like part of the way that we heal our karma is by having help from other people. And so no person is meant to be an island. We are meant to receive help, that we're meant to receive help. But I know that it can be expensive. And it's like, okay, I don't want to have to pay for a session every single time I have an issue. We need both. We need a self-healing method. And then we also need a regular healing practice that we can do with others. But the big thing to remember is that I think the thing that prevents us from healing, the thing that ends up getting energy stuck in our bodies in the first place, is that we are afraid to feel our emotions, that emotions, as they start to come up, they are very scary. They feel like something dark, like something we have to push down. And we don't want to feel them because they're very, very unpleasant, right? The heavier feelings, especially shame. Oh, that's the worst of all, right? Shame, anger. Anger is actually like that energy that is slightly above the harder emotion. So anger is like the lid that keeps all the other junk down. So frequently you have to get through the anger first, and then comes up all the shame and all the other stuff. So, but we're afraid to feel those feelings. And I think if we embrace the idea that it is a little bit like trying to go out into the ocean. And if you've ever tried to go into an ocean where there are waves, if you stand there and let the waves hit you, it is really unpleasant. Like they'll come in and they'll get in your face and up your nose. And it's just really hard to walk into a wave. But if you bend over and put your head down and dive through the wave, you will be through it and on the other side, boom, like that. And emotions are the same way, that if you feel it coming up, if you can identify and name that emotion, if you go into it headlong, and what I do is you try to first figure out what that emotion is, and then try to feel it as hard as you put. So if it's anger, just go into it. And what you want to do is imagine that anger is in the center, and then feel it growing until it fills up your entire body. And you want to fill yourself with whatever that feeling is, and just really go into it. And the key is, if you do that, if you really go into it, it will only last for 90 seconds. And what will happen, what's amazing, is as you are feeling that feeling, eventually you'll be just focusing on it, maybe telling yourself that story, trying to hold the feeling of it. And then pretty soon you'll be like, wait a minute, I can't, okay, where is it? I'm still looking for it. I'm trying to find it. Like it starts to drift out of your field and you can't hold it anymore. And you'll get little whispers of it. And then all of a sudden it's just gone. And it is so gone that 2 weeks later, you may have a hard time remembering what it was that made you so upset. Like it will be gone. And if people want help with that, I do actually have the angels one time came through with a lovely guided self-healing using a technique. Their technique is much more clear and defined, but I have it on my YouTube channel and people are welcome. If you want, I can give you the link. And it is a guided self-healing and it works amazingly well. Yeah.
Yes, if you want to send me the link, I'll put it in the description.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And Anne, thank you so much for sharing with us today. I would like to give you a chance to share where the viewers can find you and anything that you have going on that you'd like to share.
Thanks so much. Yeah. So my YouTube channel is my name, Ann Tucker. And then my website again is anntucker.com. I love to invite people, if they don't have a regular healing practice, I do offer a monthly healing session with the angels called Peace Bathing. And it's on my website every month. And it's an amazing healing process. It's a lot of teaching that comes through, as well as incredible healing frequencies. So if people don't have a practice, they're certainly welcome to come and find me there. I also do have some in-person events coming up. I'm going to be in Denver at the end or beginning of June. I'm going to be in New York I think at the end of September, and Los Angeles in November. So would love to be able to meet people in person. If you wanted those, all those, everything is linked up on my website. So you can find out about it there.
Wonderful. And I'll have all those links in the description. So, Anne, thank you so much again.
Thank you so much. It was an awesome conversation, Melissa.
Thank you for watching the Love Covered Life podcast. If you'd like to support this channel, I've shared the link to my Patreon in the description box, where you can get benefits like behind the scenes of this podcast, early ad-free access to interviews, and a monthly live stream Q&A with me. I've also shared the link to my free Discord community, which I've just started and I'm very excited about, where I share free resources and a bunch of channels and forums where people can connect and grow spiritually together. You'll also find the link to my website, lovecoveredlife.com, where I share my paintings, my TikTok and Instagram at Melissa Denise, and my clips channel, where I share shorter clips of my podcast episodes. Thank you for watching and thank you for your support.